Alrighty. This is Jennifer Ross, Carly Goodrum, and Debbie Parrish. And this is our peer review for task 1 for the SCIP. And in task 1, we were asked to lead a SCIP team to conduct a needs assessment to determine the gaps in communication between the internal and external communities and potential opportunities for involvement of these two communities in decisions that have a direct effect on the community and the schools. So we are going to discuss our papers and what we came up with as far as this is concerned. Who would like to start? Or we, I can go ahead and we could do a preview and just tell them what our paper is about, and then so you know what the paper is about, and then go. Is that good?
Yeah, or we can go with one person and the other two do the reviews and
yeah, do that. That's good. That's good.
So who wants to have their paper reviewed first?
You can do mine if you want to. I don't care.
Okay. You want me to go, Carly, or do you want to go?
Either or is fine. Do you want me to go first? Want me to lead, or you?
You go right ahead.
Okay. Well, Debbie, I just want to tell you, you did a phenomenal job with task 1. It was very detailed. You used the teacher working condition survey and the school student surveys to conduct your needs assessment and your organizational analysis process. You were able to identify areas of strength, such as your school leadership, and you were also able to identify opportunities for growth, such as preventing cyberbullying and instituting a new culture focused on school-wide use of student data to guide your instructional decisions. I really found your ability to explain your school's demographic information and specifically the roles of your team members, as well as your in-depth analysis of the teacher working condition surveys, including your use of graphics to display the data, very thorough. I really like that you outlined your action steps as well in regards to the implementation of your strategies within your narrative as well. As far as any areas where I felt there were some weaknesses where we could make some changes, I wanted to consider changing your teacher working condition survey data to one that displays the performance across years, specifically 2016, 2018, and then to the current year of 2020. When I reviewed your narrative.
Can I ask you a question about that? Do you mean put it all into one chart?
Well, like when I was reviewing your data on charts and the graphics that you included in your narrative, a lot of them were showing across the school and the district and the state. Whereas in your narrative, it was specifically stated in regards to the different years across the years. So 2016, 2018.
Gotcha. For just the school. And so I could take off this date. You're saying I could take off the date, the district and the state.
Right.
Yes.
There's actually a way for you to be able to have the year data compared each year and display on the teacher working condition survey. I can show it to you because I think I included a couple of those in my narrative. I think I actually created the charts, but I think there's a way to actually accumulate those graphics using the TWC.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'd like that.
You're welcome. And I think another area of consideration mentioned was, I believe there was an area of potential opportunities for growth when it came to the student survey, where 11th grade students indicated 69% indicated that they believe an adult at the school listens to them. In particular, an average of 64%, and that's including the 9th and 10th grade students suggested teachers at the school were interested in them as a person. So I felt like that showed or demonstrated a lack of communication between the internal stakeholders, and that might be an area that you might want to consider mentioning in your narrative as a potential need. As far as your leadership ability, outstanding. You demonstrated thorough leadership in selecting your members and facilitating your discussion amongst your group members during your meetings. As far as mechanics, everything was amazing. The only recommendations I believe I included in my peer review were to maybe consider changing your written words as far as your numbers into the actual numbers when you are referring to any amount over 10.
Okay. And I'll double check that on APA too, because I think it's anything under 100 that you have
No,
to
it's 10.
spell out.
It's 10. It's 10 and above. Anything over 10, you can
Okay.
include as a number figure. It's anything
Okay.
below 10, you have to write it out as a word.
Okay. Okay. I'll double check that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm trying to see, your narrative was, like I said, the structure was amazing, cohesive, tone was very professional. And I think I made one additional recommendation in regards to the spacing with APA 7. You no longer required a double space and only a single space. And I think that was about it. That was my only recommendations. But other than that, everything was amazing. Thorough analysis, like I said, fully demonstrated leadership capabilities throughout your narrative and through your artifacts.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, I also thought it was very strong, and I listed I'm going to just kind of walk through the template. So in terms of the content being aligned with course content, I have that that was certainly the case, that your task one referenced multiple components of school culture, including social justice and equality, being addressed through objectives to solve problems of cyberbullying. That clear effort, like Carly mentioned, was made to include internal and external stakeholders. And I was especially impressed about the business partners being included. I thought that was really strong. And then consideration given to virtual and in-person as a response to COVID. And also, just recognizing the importance of shifting between those formats to reach all your school community. Strengths, I said that your strengths aligned your task one and with the accomplished level of the rubric, that your data was very well documented and your analyses were explained clearly, that you had graphs and charts to illustrate, that you compared the years of the teacher working condition survey. And I did not think about that Carly said about your chart actually showing the years. I did notice that your charts had the district and state. And I just remember when I was reading it thinking, well, I don't really need to pay attention to that part of it. I just need to look at the, her school. And so that really is a good idea. And I didn't know that there was a way to do that, like what Carly's talking about. I just made my own I just went into Google Sheets and made mine and put the columns with the different years.
I've been doing it, like just doing the snipping tool also. So I can just even snip that part off and, keep it, because that's a great suggestion. I hadn't even thought about it, because you really don't need it. So I think that's an awesome suggestion.
Yeah. And I had trouble with my snipping tool. Like there was other data that I didn't want in my chart, but it wouldn't let me size it down enough. And so that was a little frustrating for me. So if that works, I think that's great.
Okay, I'll work on that.
And then participants are identified and specifics provided in terms of their roles and their backgrounds, which was great. The setting description was very clear and specific, and the recommendations were aligned with your need areas that you've identified at your school. So those were all strengths. The only recommendations I had were the student data that you reflected. It was like raw data that you guys had, and it was kind of in sentence form, but there's a lot of numbers in there. And I really like that you had the raw data, because I think that makes it more authentic. Like you can see what really was sent out to teachers or whatever. But just for the ease of reading it, if you put that in a chart, that might make it easier just for reference.
Okay.
And I also put that because you're talking about social justice and equality, it might be a great point that you could connect it back to coursework about cultural competence.
Okay.
And then leadership, I said that you demonstrated leadership in multiple ways, including the external stakeholders and the business partners, along with school staff and students, ensures that all the community members are represented, which I think is important. And that choosing your staff members based on experience levels and relationship to your objectives reflects an overall understanding of your total purpose. I thought that everything was written professionally and the grammar was great. The headings were, you know, helped the organization and were in the right places, and all your figures and appendices were easy to locate and read. So I
Great.
thought it was awesome.
Thank you. Good suggestions. Thank you so much. All righty. Whose do we want to go to next? You want to do Jennifer's? You're going to do Jennifer's next, Carly? You and I'll do that one.
Okay.
You want to go ahead?
All righty. Jennifer, once again, you did a fabulous job on your task one as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Your narrative and artifacts align with the course content in the rubric. You effectively use your teacher working condition survey, your MTSS needs assessment, and your teacher empowerment survey information to effectively conduct your needs assessment and organizational analysis process. To clearly identify your area of strength. Your school has an area of strength of school and climate and community support, and the opportunities of growth that were identified in your needs assessment and organizational analysis was technology, the proper use of MTSS protocol, and your teachers' involvement in school decision-making. As far as your overall strengths, like I said, great explanation of your school's demographic and the background information. You clearly identify the role of each of your team members in your SCIP team. Your analysis of your teacher working condition survey and your MTSS needs assessment data were very clear and on point, and it supported your recommendations that you made later on in your SCIP. The narrative, the candidate also described the actions needed to accomplish your short-term and long-term goals. And like I said, all your information was cohesive and it connected thoroughly to the overall objective that you were focusing on throughout your narrative. As far as any weaknesses, the only weaknesses that I kind of wanted to consider, and they really weren't weaknesses, it was just kind of some considerations you might want to include. And some of those were, a lot of your information highlighted that your school had strengths. As far as the school climate and community support, you might want to include some data that kind of reflects that in the narrative.
That's a good idea.
And to highlight some of the percentage data that related to your decrease in teacher satisfaction, as this related directly to your 2018 and 2020 North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey results. Just the area to kind of point out that those were kind of some areas of deficit in your school.
Sure.
And I think that was about it as far as any weaknesses overall. Your leadership capabilities, like I said, were amazing, were clearly identified, and you're leading your discussion amongst your committee and also during your data analysis process. Grammar and mechanics, like I said, everything was amazing. Everything was on point. No real errors there. Only recommendations were similar to one that I made for Debbie prior. Maybe want to consider actually using the values for numbers representative higher of 10 and include the dollar sign in some of your figures.
Okay.
As far as organization, was well organized. It flowed smoothly. Great headings. Everything was relevant to the content that you were discussing throughout your narrative. In APA, everything was good to go. I believe the only thing that I might have mentioned was maybe consider your in-text citations,
Yes.
including at the end of the paragraph, if it's not a direct quote. But overall content was fabulous. Objective was clearly identified and data related strongly and helped support your needs assessment and organizational analysis.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate what you said. I didn't even think about putting the data for the strength. So I'll go back and add that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. I think the task content was, of course, aligned with the course content. You used your teacher working conditions survey and your MTSS data to support the needs assessment. It was evident that your data was collected and supported the needs assessment and the steps that would be taken to improve communication among your stakeholders in the area of sufficient access to instructional technology. Knowing definitely influenced the doing. I felt like that it was your information about the lack of technology was very good. I was able to follow that, and also was able to follow your other information that you covered there. Your strength, I said, it was, again, a great paper. It was hard. I mean, I could have put a million strengths. There are so many good things.
Thank you.
The author, I just called you the author because it was easier for me than Jennifer every time. Jennifer.
I know. I wasn't sure if you were supposed to put names.
I
on
wasn't
that.
sure if you're supposed to put names or not either. So I said, expertly addressed all attributes of the needs assessment and the organizational analysis. She included a list of participants in her SCIP committee and included an extensive analysis of her findings. The recommendations were attainable with support from the leadership team. So it was, I felt like that you truly looking at the rubric, that you were definitely, and I have just drawn a blank on the last, distinguished, is that right? On the last one? No, what is it? That's, I'm on teacher evaluation. What is the strength?
I think it goes accomplished and then maybe distinguishes one of them. I don't have it.
Whatever the fourth one is, the highest one, that's the one you got. I just can't think of what it is right now. It's been a while since we've done one of these. So I'm trying to fill in. The author also, if I look at your weaknesses, I wanted to clarify something because I just wasn't sure if I was reading it carefully enough, and I may need to go back and do that because it may be on my fault. Did you identify two gaps in communication? It was the MTSS piece as well as the technology piece?
Yes, it was two different ones and they had different goals, short-term and long-term goals.
Okay.
And the MTSS piece was not as cut and dry as the others because it didn't come out of the teacher working conditions survey.
Right. That was just something that you knew happened within your school. Okay.
Right.
That's the only thing I could say as a weakness is that I wasn't clear on that.
Okay.
And, being able to just kind of maybe clarify that a little bit within your thing, that was just another thing that came out of maybe your SCIP team conversation. If that's how it is, if that's how that one came up. The other one, it was clear that, it came out of the teacher working conditions. I just wasn't sure about the MTSS piece, kind of where that came from. So you may just want to clarify that.
That's a good idea. And I think I talked about the principal had identified that as something she wanted to improve because it was a district issue, like the district had said that was not a strength for us, but we certainly had talked about it, with the team. So I can
that's what I was gonna say,
maybe that will clear it up.
Yeah, I think elaborate a little bit right there about the team discussion over that, because I saw where the principal said that, but it wasn't clear that the team actually discussed it. So
right, I will add that. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just fill in right there for that. As far as leadership, you always do a really good job of that. It was very evident that you facilitated the creation of the team. You made it very clear in your chart who the members were, that kind of thing, and what their purpose was on the team. There was evidence of delegation where you stated that the members of the team gathered information and that they created surveys. It's evident that the author collected appropriate data and presented it to the group for analysis. So you could definitely tell that you were prepared as far as being a leader. You were ready to go. You had everything ready. and you had the data available to them for them to go through and analyze and discuss. So I thought that was really good. You could tell you were very prepared in that. As far as mechanics and grammar, I said it was written professionally as usual. Acronyms such as HES are identified for your elementary school, and proper grammar was used throughout. There are a few areas where Google Editor, and I don't know if you noticed that the Google Editor, it comes up with blue lines up under it and stuff. You may want to go back, like in your Word document, and just check those. If you right click it, it'll give you suggestions
Okay.
on ways to correct it. Like I always write, like you have to do something, and it comes back to me every time that you should put must there. So I
Oh,
use
wow.
that
I
a
didn't even
lot.
know that existed.
If you go in wherever you've got like red lines or blue lines up under your words, or sometimes it shows up as brown lines, if you right click it, it'll pop up, or sometimes you have to left click it, but either way you just put your cursor on the word and it'll tell you what to replace it with.
So I always do mine in Microsoft Word. I'm wondering
Yeah,
if
you
I need
can,
to
it
copy
does
and
it.
paste it. It'll
Yep,
do it
you
in
can do it
Microsoft
in,
Word?
it does it in Word. I did mine in
Okay.
Word too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try that. I did not know that existed. Thank
Yep.
you.
So that helps a lot. That's really a helpful tool. Let's see. The spelling and formatting was all correct. There were no issues with that. It was very easy to follow. Organization, of course, always easy to follow. The headings were appropriately bolded for easy access, and the figures were very neat. They were large enough and readable, and they were large enough to be read. You know, sometimes they get so small it's hard to see, but yours were large enough to be read without reading glasses.
Yeah. That's saying something, isn't it?
Yeah, that's good for me. If I can read it without reading glasses, you're good. And your APA formatting, I felt like was correct. I need to go back though and check some of Carly's things that she said. I didn't know some of that had changed. So
Yeah,
I need to
that
go
was a
back
good
and
point
review that.
about the numbers and everything.
Yeah, and the spacing, I didn't realize that had changed. So the only thing that I saw as far as APA formatting was concerned is you were missing a reference section. I don't know if
I am. I completely forgot to put that in there. So thank you.
you're welcome. And I didn't know, like in that reference section, you may want to consider referencing the teacher working conditions survey for
Yes.
18 and 19, just putting
Yes.
those websites in there. And all visuals, everything you had were cited properly with figures or appendix, whichever they were. Everything looked great. It was awesome. It was very interesting reading. It was interesting to see kind of where our schools are, and and what we see as gaps. It's very interesting at the different levels, because
I was going to say that has been such a
Mhm.
benefit of this group the whole time is that, just seeing what kind of issues come up at the different levels and
Right.
how you approach them, and what becomes a priority for you based on your students and what ages they are versus,
And I think we have an advantage because we have you at elementary, Carly at middle, and me at high school, and how each of us have some of those same issues. Like
Yep.
we have MTSS issues at our school. I mean, that's going on right now. But to see how y'all handle them, and some of your suggestions are things that, I could certainly take back to our team and share with them. So I think this is really valuable, a valuable tool.
I agree. Well, thank you both for that. I'm excited to make those changes because it'll definitely improve things.
Yep. Very good. All right, Miss Carla, you ready for us to look at yours?
I'm ready.
Ready,
You want me to
Freddie?
start, Debbie, so you can
Yeah.
take a minute?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead, please.
Okay. Carly, yours was also, I feel like blessed and also cursed to be in a group with you girls because your writing is so good. Like I learned so much, and it's so easy to read and understand, but then I'm like, what in the world can I suggest? But anyway, okay. So just again, going through the rubric, Carly, I have that your task was also aligned with course content, that your evidence in task 1 reflects understanding of the roles of community members and their impact on the school, and your focus of equitable and just and fair treatment of all students was strong and certainly aligned with what we're talking about in class and learning about. and that the understanding of enrollment trends as they related to the school climate was exhibited. And I thought that was a really interesting point that you brought up. Strengths, I have that your task one included your participants and their roles, a clear description of your setting, your analyses, explanations were very clear, and that you did identify strengths and weaknesses. And I thought that was a really strong point. That your recommendations were categorized as short and long term, which helped me as a reader understand how you were going to approach things. That you showed an understanding of impacts of communications of students, staff, and community members. And I especially liked the visual graphic to depict the ACT behavior response regimen. And I just feel like there are so many different models for different components that you might address in MTSS and tier and definitely behavior. And so for you to describe it, it was well explained, but having that visual was really helpful for me to understand how that's structured. So I really thought that was a great strength in yours. And then again, just like you said, it's very difficult to find weaknesses. I said that same thing as I mentioned with Debbie, since you are talking about equitable treatment of students, and that's a focal point for your school, that was just an opportunity that you could relate the cultural competence that we've been working on with Dr. Sanders. And then that your prompt 2 references multiple data points, and that section of the paper didn't have the charts and graphs that you used in the first prompt, and that might be something else you could add to make it stronger. Your leadership was demonstrated in the development of teams, and determination of needs and making recommendations for your school, and also reflected in comparing data across years and recognizing the differences between your school when you're in, like, which you guys are on Plan C now, and how that might compare to a year when you weren't experiencing the pandemic. Your language was formal and appropriate. Everything grammar, sentence structure, everything was well organized and professionally written. All your figures and appendices were clear, easy to locate, labeled correctly, subheadings and headings organized it and kept a flow, and that everything was aligned with APA formatting. So it was awesome. I enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
Carly, yours are always really hard to critique because I could write forever about all the good things that you have. And your content was wonderful. It was aligned and appropriate to support everything you said. I always think that is something that's really important with yours, is that you make a statement and you always seem to have content to follow up with whatever you say. You also have a visual to follow up with what you say. It's just filled with valuable data that definitely represents that you totally understand what you're doing and the systems in place. You have systems in place to be able to prove exactly what you're talking about or what you're trying to prove or disprove. So I always enjoy reading yours. And also I love your graphs. I love the colors of them. That's always really nice. Always grabs my eye. With rubric strength, I think it's evident from the content of the narrative that a committee was created and a needs assessment was conducted to establish gaps that exist in internal and external communication. You led the group and included all of the following narrative. You had a background description of the setting, a clear statement of the purpose of the needs assessment, a list of participants who participated during the needs assessment, and at what stage of the process the participants were active, an analysis of the findings, a set of recommendations that identifies the avenues of communication that will be established, and a set of recommendations includes both your short and your long-term goals. So you definitely covered every one of the requirements for the SCIP. So that was very, very good. The data and the narrative, this is the weakness. This is the only thing that I don't even know if it would help. I don't know, but the data and the narrative may be easier to follow if excerpts from the teacher working condition surveys were copied as figures throughout the narrative, sort of like I did, just so they could see that it actually came from the teacher working condition survey. I don't know that it matters, but sometimes it's nice just to see when you're quoting data like that there's actually a definite home, that it's actually coming from a specific data source. So that would be one of the only things. The only other thing that I saw that maybe is your proof of leadership. If you, in your appendices, if maybe you had agendas, if you included agendas or emails where you had invited the team to participate, and how you gathered your team, that maybe just evidence the leadership piece a little bit more, just so they could see that how you created your membership. But other than that, I wouldn't mess with it. It looks really good and it's very interesting. So I really like what you did. As far as leadership, it was definitely demonstrated by the creation of the group and the facilitation of meetings where your data was obviously discussed and the goals were created to bridge your gaps in internal and external communication. There was definitely evidence of analytical observations that refer to the prompts. You made really good points in there when you were talking about the equitable treatment of students. And I noticed in your data too, that was really interesting is you have a lot of the same issues I have at my school, because even in your teacher working conditions survey, your scores are pretty good. I mean, it's hard to find ways, to improve your school when your teachers already feel like, 96, 95% are answering in the affirmative. So I thought it was good that you really dug deep to find some really good things that were the equitable treatment was really good. I would also recommend, like Jennifer did, that talking about justice, equality, and those things, maybe incorporate that into some of your long-term plans, your long-term goals may be effective to add in. The artifact was definitely professionally written. It uses appropriate formal language and sentence structure. The mechanics and grammar and formatting were all correct. I did not see anything at all that needs to be changed with that. It was very easy to read. Again, you were like Jennifer, they were big enough. All of your figures were big enough. They're able to be read easy to find. You could relate them back to, they were in the correct place, and you could relate them back to the narrative very easily. And all of your APA formatting was followed. So ladies, y'all did great work.
Thank you, Debbie. What I did was I went back and I added our email to my final when you
that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
It along with my Zoom link as the artifact towards the end of that task one.
Great. That's good. Yeah. And other than that, I mean, I think everybody, it was pretty specific. It's kind of like, I think we got it now. I mean, when we get back to looking at when we were doing, what was the first one we did? The APSL? The first
APSL, maybe.
Yeah. The APSL was the first one. I think we've come a long way, baby.
I think we have too. I think we have too. But I am always like, it is helpful for somebody else to say, I mean, I don't know, like some of the things you pointed out, I wouldn't even have thought about, both of you. So
yeah.
It is hard to find things to improve upon, but I think just each person has a different perspective and they think of something you might not have ever thought of. So
well, and the other thing that for me, y'all do such a good job of the feedback that's another thing I've learned by doing this and that I need to do next time is be more specific. I feel like I'm way too general with stuff, so I need to go back and be more specific and pinpoint specific things versus just say, answer the questions. Because I just tend to answer the questions. Yes, you did this, you did that, but y'all are really good at pinpointing specific things. So I appreciate the fact that y'all dug deep to do that, and I will put more effort into looking over that for next time. So I really think that was helpful to hear how you pinpointed things. So thank y'all for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yep.
It's hard to grade us, so it is. It's hard. It's like you have to really go back and read and say, okay.
Yeah. Reread the rubric and reread the paper. And, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
are we
So
good?
do we want to
I'm just
stop the
gonna
recording?
I was gonna say, I'm gonna stop the recording, but I just want to make sure, is everybody done with what they wanted to say?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay.
We're good.